Okay, welcome everyone to the Create a List Part 2 training. Today I want to focus on a few things. I want to go a little bit quicker and have a little bit more depth to what we're talking about. So we're going to continue on from where we left off with creating a new list. We're just going to focus on three main categories of the best ways to create your list, and we'll talk about those more in depth. So again, if you're logged into your main screen, you're logged into the main menu, we'll start off with My Voters, and then we'll touch on My Campaign for just a little bit. And as we remember, those are two very distinct databases, so you always want to make sure that you're looking at the right database for what you need. So if we're in My Voters and we go to Create a New List, we'll go into some more things that we looked at. I know last week we talked a little bit about suppressions and how we remove people based on if they had good voting addresses or bad phones. So we're going to kind of go on from there, and we'll talk about a few things. What I want to start off with is actually go into survey questions, and that's just down here. A lot of campaigns now are having a big push for when you want to ask survey questions. When you're talking to voters, you really want to include a survey question ask, just because it really helps narrow down who's going to be supporting you, who's not. And as you kind of go on into your campaign and talk to voters on the phone or on the doors, the more questions that are answered the more you can push your list into smaller categories, as well as having more information about who's likely to vote for you and who's not. So what you want to do is, if you want to select more than one survey question, you'll click as before on the blue part of it, and that pulls up multiple survey questions. Otherwise, if not, you can just go ahead and click the drop-down menu, and you'll see some of these. So survey questions have been created by campaigns in the past, but also can be created by campaigns in the future. So you can search by that. So a lot of times it depends on what committee you're part of. So a lot of committees might not have access to this many survey questions. These survey questions are just done from the Kentucky Democratic Party's committee. But let's say you're working on, maybe Jack Conway's campaign nowadays. You'll have access to less survey questions, but as they get added in, you'll see more and more that you can narrow down by. So I'm going to go ahead and do one from a few years ago. We'll just look at. Let's do one from 2010. So it's going to be a candidate support, and we'll see how it looks. Okay. So if you click on that, you'll have responses. So every survey question, if you've ever encountered someone who's knocked on your door or called you on the phone and asked you, how likely are you to support? Are you definitely going to support candidate A? Probably, undecided, probably the opponent, or definitely the opponent. They're going off scripts like this, where they include survey questions. So if you're looking for someone who's definitely a Boswell supporter, all you would do would be to click this. And if that's all you wanted to do for your list, you would go ahead and click Run Search. But let's say you're looking at people who are more of your persuasion universe. You might want to go ahead and click probably, undecided, and probably the opponent. And that'll give you a good choice to pick up on voters who have not decided yet and whom you might be able to talk to and swing. So that's why it's very important to have those survey questions in your scripts, because as you identify people who are in this range of not sure if they're going to vote for, you'll be able to follow up with follow-up calls, maybe send mailers out there to follow up with them and push them to your side. Okay. So survey questions are a big thing, and if you want to select multiple survey questions, again, I'll show you how that looks. If you wanted to do people who supported, let's say, we'll go back to 2010 in the Boswell race. Where is that? Or we'll just do Jack Conway's race in 2010. We could do somewhat favorable, somewhat unfavorable, as well as looking at a different race, for example, and we'll just pick a simple one. Need more info here. So if we click on this in this survey question, as well as up here for the 2010 Boswell race, or excuse me, Conway race, and you run your search, you'll save it first of all down here at the very bottom, and then you'll have all those checked, and then you'll again go back to run your search. So once it loads back, again, you could run your search, and the only people that will show up on your list will be people who met those check boxes from the multiple survey questions. Okay, but let's say you want to also look at people who have voted in the past, some people who have turned out before, and you know they're going to get to the polls. And I'll show you how to do this, but also show you later on how to make this more exact as we have more information about the voters and the voter file. I'll show you a way to be even more precise about this. But going down to the very bottom here is where your voting history is. And so we'll drop that down. So we want to go to voting history. Voting history gives you a few options about what you can choose from. You can include people who voted in the primary elections or in the general elections. You can pick how many of those they voted, and we'll talk about how you can search that. So you want to include anyone who did. So this is people who, once you click these boxes, they'll be included in your list. So you could do any, all, at least, exactly, or no more than. Any is you won't have any drop downs. You'll just have any, and you want to do people who maybe voted in at least one of the last 4 elections, right? So if you click the last 4 general elections, these will be people who have voted in any of these. So they might have voted in just 2010 or just 2011, but they'll be included in the list. It's because it's in the any category. If you go to all, again, you'll have people who voted in all 4 of these elections. At least, now you have a separate box here. So if you want to do at least, you want to do someone who's voted in 3 of the last 4 elections, you'll have to press 3. And then you get to choose from someone who's voted in 3 of these 4 elections. You're not exactly sure which 3 they voted in as of right now, but you know they voted in at least 3 of these last 4 elections. We could do exactly 3. So you go for 3 of the 4. And then no more than, so say you want to do no more than 3 of the 4 following, you can have that as well. Okay, and then here's primary as well. If you want to choose primary, you could do that too. And you get a choice if you wanted people who voted or didn't vote. But as we mentioned, there's more specific ways to do this too. But let me just go quickly to My Campaign first to show you one other option that My Campaign has that My Voters does not. And if you excuse me, I'm skipping a lot of these over just because they're either self-explanatory or not really needed. And we'll come back to scores in just a second. So we'll leave this page. We haven't run the search. We haven't added anything to the list. And right now we're on My Campaign. So like before, we mentioned it's a different database with different ID numbers based on who's in the list. And again, this list might include people who are not of voting age or who are not registered in the state, which is unlike My Voters. So in My Campaign, I'm going to create a new list. And they'll look very similar in terms of the categories you're searching by to what was in My Voters. One difference is volunteer history. Because in My Campaign, you're adding your volunteers into that, so specific just to your campaign, you're able to see that option that you're not able to see in My Voters. So if you click on volunteers, and I'm just going to do a very basic search for volunteers, you have your activity list here, you have your drop-down menu if you like, as well as if you want to click on the blue, you can do multiple selections here. And you'll have different options if they have attended an event, if they were invited. Again, these have been added from before. So it depends on what your committee is. You'll have to add events before you can search by them. But that's for a different training. So again, if you select what you want, as we go back to create a list, for a really basic one, all I want to do is include any volunteer, and it could be active or inactive. So active means they're in an active campaign. Inactives from before. You also have a choice of when they volunteered. If you really want to do a Sunday afternoon phone call, you might be able to choose from people who have volunteered in the afternoon on Sunday before. Okay. So in this case, I'll preview my results from the Kentucky Democratic Party. These are the only people that have been added by this campaign or by this committee. You see about 2,500 people have been volunteers. And so based on your committee, you might have more, you might have less. Really depends on how active you are in getting volunteers and how active you are in checking that they're volunteers and adding them to your calendar of events. So that's for different training, but also just, it gives you a good idea of how you can target people that way. But as I promised before, we talked about how you want to make your list as specific as you can, and really include all the tools that Vote Builder has to offer, based on years of voting history and years of how we've updated it constantly, to make sure it's always better. So again, I'm going to go back to my voters, go back to create a new list, and as we talked about before, go into scores. So not everyone will have access to scores just because it's very proprietary information. There's a big data science team at the Democratic National Committee that works on these kinds of scores to include them. So especially if you're someone, a campaign manager or a field director, or if you're maybe a specific volunteer or field organizer, someone who really needs access to these scores, that can be granted to you. But if not everyone's going to see them. So if you look into my voters and you don't see scores, or if you see scores and nothing will drop down below that, that's why. So I'm going into scores, and based on this committee, they have access to all of these scores. So going back from 2013 into 2015. So I want to talk about a few that you'll see. They'll probably be added to your committee as it becomes active, or if you're working in the Conway campaign right now, these will be active for you as long as you have access to scores. A big one you'll see is the turnout score. Turnout score is in your voter file is people who you want to select on a scale of 0 to 100 of how likely they are to vote. So let's say someone who has a score of 40, 41. These people, if I run my search here, have a 40% to 41% chance of voting. So in other words, 40 out of 100 times they'll vote. So you get that option, and if you leave this one blank, it'll be 40 or higher. Sometimes you want to go down to 80, so you want to choose people from 40 to 80. The DNC also has a turnout score, same idea, how many times out of 100 they'll vote. So again, scale of 0 to 100. A good one, though, is also for volunteer propensity. This is just brand new, that has just been added to our voter file for 2015. And these are people based on a percentile range of how, out of everyone that's volunteered, the odds that these people will to volunteer. So if I click on people who are from 99 up, these are people out of every person in the voter file, they're in the 99th percentile of people to volunteer. So if you're looking for volunteers, using that search tool, it's a great way. And they break it down by phone, by walk, and a general propensity. And that's just based on contactability. So if you want to call them using the phone records, you want to choose the phone. If you're going to want to go door to door and really talk to people at the doors, you'll use the walk from. Or if you just want a general, you'll use this to select your propensity score. Okay. Down here is your Democratic Party support score. Just general for just a general Democrat. And again, same idea for this one, just a scale of 0 to 100. From 50, the idea would be then if the score is from 50 or higher, they're more likely to support a Democrat. 50 or lower, they're likely to support someone other or a Republican. And then finally, the reason why I didn't really mention phones too much here is because the DNC has a phone contactability form here too. So this is based on records from the past of people trying to call people, and if they they're not answering their phone, or they refuse it, or you get a lot of wrong numbers or disconnected or whatever it may be, you have a score here. So if you really want to choose people that the best chance you have to address them, you really might want to go from 60 or higher or so, depending on that. And same thing goes for address quality too. So if you're going out and you want to do, let's say, a mailer, make sure it gets to the right person, or if you're sending out people to walk door to door, you really want to make sure your address quality is above a certain threshold, really depending on how many volunteers you have or whatever it may be. But these scores give you really a lot of great options to really target the people you want and really make sure you make the best of your resources. And that's why when we talk about our voter file, we talk about how it's really active and how it's always getting better and better the more information is inputted. And that way, we have more information and we really get more accurate scores as we go on. So what I want to do is I want to talk about really adding to your list as well. What I want to do is I want to do a rough search first of all. I just want to do a search of, let's say, I want to do people who have an address type. So right now I have nothing in my search. They're just registered active voters. And all I want to do is look at walkable houses. And so I'll preview my results here. And there'll be a lot of people who just have homes that are walkable, right? So I'll run my search. And this is all in the state of Kentucky and access on street level walkable. But now I really want to, narrow my search a little bit, because after all, a list of over 2 million people is not really going to get me very far to do that. So if I click here, after I've ran my search, I have a few tools to use. And I'm just going to talk about today about either editing my existing search, adding people, removing people, or narrowing people. So first, what I want to do is I want to remove people with a phone contactability score less than 40. So I clicked on remove people, and it's right here. And then it's in my second step of my list. And I'm removing people, and I'm going back down to scores. And I don't want people who have a phone contactability below 40. So I'm going down to my live phone contactability, and I'm going up to 40. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and run my search, and let's see what happens of how many people I've removed from my list. Okay, so we're down to about 2.2 million people, right? Well, let's go ahead and edit my search now. And edit my existing search. And this time I'm just going to select party, and I'm going to choose just Democrats. And as we go to party here, drop down, we'll just choose just Democrats. And we'll run our search again. Let's see what happens here. So let's include everyone that's walkable, the live phone contactability below 40, and a registered Democrat. So still over 1 million people in this list. So this time I want to narrow it down by county. So I'm going to go ahead and go back into edit search, go to narrow people, and then this time I'm narrowing it down by county. So I'll go into my location, I'll choose my county, and I just want, let's say, Jefferson County. Okay, and again, I'll run my search, and this will add one more step to my list. Okay, so I'm about 209,000 people right now. And finally, I'll do one more step for my list and really make it the best way I can. So what I want to do this time is I want to add people this time. And because I chose Democrats, registered Democrats in my last time, what I want to do is I want to go into my scores. And this time, maybe I'll have possibly some Republicans who might vote Democrat for me this time. So maybe I'll choose people with a Democratic Party support score from 40. So maybe their score might be, favoring the Republicans. But just in case I want to add maybe more of a persuasion target, I could do 40, maybe go up to 70, and really talk to people who are more persuadable, people who might not absolutely vote for the Democrat, who might not absolutely vote for the Republican. But if we talk to them over the phone or door to door, we have a good chance to talk to them and convince them to vote Democrat. So let's run my search. And we get all the way up to 746,000 people based on the four criteria that I listed. So that's this for now, but I have a few questions. So I'm going to go in. And we're all good here with questions. Again, if anyone has questions now, don't be afraid to ask that on the Google Hangout right now. Those watching it later, feel free to post on our page, and we'll try to answer those as well. But as we go forward, we're going to move into saving our lists and sharing our saved lists with other users, and really going into some of the more advanced steps and really see all the tools that Vote Builder has to offer. So thank you, all of you who have watched now, and those of you that will watch in the future, and we'll talk to you soon.